Hello, welcome to my channel, A Book Forest. My name is Kim and today I'm going to be doing a tag. It is the I Dare You tag. I was tagged by Mark from Book Ramble, so thank you very much for the tag. So I'll start because there's quite a few questions in this tag. So what book has been on your shelf the longest? So it does not specify which book, if you have read it or not. So the book I've had for the longest is Anne of Green Gables in French, and that's one of the first books that got me into reading. It's still one of my favorites ever, and I absolutely recommend it. I kept it in pristine condition because I've had it since like I was 12. So I'm pretty proud of that. And also there's probably a few Barbara Cartland books that I got. My grandmother used to buy them for me and I kept a few of them. So second question, what is your current read? This monster, like everybody else. I'm not as far along as most people. I thought I would start it earlier in the month, but alas, it wasn't meant to be. So I'm making my way through it, and I probably just read it during the holidays because I want to have, like, once I start, I don't want to stop. So it's better to have a bit more time. What is your last read? My last read that I finished was with White Sand, Volume 1, also by Brandon Sanderson. It was alright. It was on audiobook, and the first volume was nice. I've started the second one, and it's so far not as good, but we'll see. I'm enjoying it as an audiobook. So, and then the book you'll read next after Wind and Truth, whenever that's done, I'm gonna finish the Fiona about Tapestry. I've already talked about it by Gabrielle Kay. The last book is The Darkest Road, and I'm really looking forward to it. And then, what book did everyone like but you hated? That's a very tricky question because you don't want to offend anyone, because there are very beloved books that I did not enjoy that much. One of them would be recently The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie Maxey. I've had been hearing about it so much that everyone was in love with that book, and I was expecting another Little Prince, by Saint-Exupéry. I was disappointed because it's mostly like sayings in that book. It's not really a story at all. It's just little, to my opinion, trite little sayings that I've known already. So it was not anything that was mind-boggling. I think it's probably meant more for children, but I didn't think it was that original at all. It sounded more like little things you would see on a bookmark or a greeting card or something. I'm sorry if you really love that book. It was not for me. I'm not going to mention the others because I don't want people coming at me with pitchforks. So what book do you keep telling yourself you'll read but probably never will? A lot. I think my TBR is immense and expanding as we speak. So I probably never will read all the books I want to read. But if I'm talking about a book I put on my TBR but I'm not likely to get to, I think it would be The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. I don't think I ever will read that. I don't like Rome that much. I would read probably smaller works about Rome. What book are you saving for retirement? Well, that's a few years away still, but I was thinking probably In Search of Lost Time, À la recherche du temps perdu by Proust. It's a long work. It takes a long time to read. I think you need to actually put in the work with that book, so I think I will wait until I'm retired to read those books because it's a big series as well. Last page read it first or save it to the end. I think that's probably from When Harry Met Sally. Harry being the one who reads the last page first in case he dies before he finishes the book. I'm not that dark, but it depends. If I really like the book, I won't. I like to read it all the way through and keep the surprise. But if I'm not enjoying the book and I'm just powering through, I probably will speed read it and go to the end pretty fast and read the end, maybe skip a bit in the middle and just know, I like to know how things end. So yeah, if I'm DNFing something or just speed reading through it, I will probably do that. So acknowledgements. Is it a waste of paper and ink or an interesting aside? Interesting question. I think if it's more than one paragraph, I probably won't read it. Because it's usually very personal, thanks to people that helped the author. So I think it's mostly meant for those people. For example, the acknowledgements in the Wind and Truth are quite long. Like they're a few pages long, like that's only the first page. And I did not read them. And I don't feel guilty about it. If it's just like a saying like, oh, to my mother or whatever, like two lines, I will read them. But yeah, I don't think it's a waste. I think it's a thank you from the author to the people who help him along. Which book character would you switch places with? Well, like if you had asked that question when I was 20, I would have said Elizabeth Bennet because I was in love with Mr. Darcy. I might have asked to switch it to the BBC miniseries with Colin Firth. But now that I wouldn't want to go anywhere without my family, so I would probably ask for all of us to be switched into any work by Lucy Maud Montgomery. So I would go into to Prince Edward Island at the beginning of the century. In the way she describes that time period in that place, it's just intoxicating to me. So I would absolutely go there. Live in a farmhouse with my family. So do you have a book that reminds you of something specific in your life, like a time, a people, a place? I have a few of those, obviously, like that's why you read. There's one that's jumped the line, though. It's A Song for Arbonne by Guy Gabriel Kay. I read that ages ago when I was about 16. And it was during a very, very warm end of summer, at the beginning of the harvest, like for the grape harvests. And I visited a vineyard with my family, my mom, and I was reading this. It's set in medieval, like it's a kind of a place that looks like medieval France. So in the south, so the troubadours, the vineyards. So it was just so engrossing. Like I felt like I was in that world on that day, and I was reading this book. It was wonderful. Like talk about setting. And I still remember it to this day. It was amazing, and it's a really good book. Name a book that you acquired in an interesting way. I don't have that many of those. I usually buy my books like everyone else in a bookstore or online. But there are a few books that I bought when traveling, but they were still from a bookstore, so I wouldn't count that. I'm gonna count this book here. It's a gift from my father, who does not read, so that it meant a lot for me. Like he thought about it, what I would like, and he bought this for me in the south of France with his girlfriend, who is my stepmother basically, and she's from there. So it's set in Nîmes. So it's called Promenade Archéologique. So archaeological musings or promenade, and it's just an archaeological musings in Nîmes, in the city, about all the ruins, because there's a very beautiful Roman ruins in that city in the south of France. It's beautiful, and it's nothing exceptional. I think it's just a university book. But first of all, it's old. It's lovely. You know, it has lived, and it was a special thought from my father. So it's worth it. And it looks good on the shelves. Have you ever given a book away for a special reason to a special person? Well, I've given books as gifts, but giving one of my books to someone else? Not really. I've given my, my kids' children's books to my niece. But when I talk about my own, no, not yet. I want maybe my niece might get my Anne of Green Gables French books, because I'm buying them all in English, but that's only if she thinks only if she likes them. If she doesn't, I'll keep them. Otherwise, there was a book I lent someone and he never gave it back. So now I remember it and I'm mad. It's one of my old bosses, and I gave him my first edition hardcover Daughter of the Forest, which is one of my favorite books. I said, like, you'll like it, just read it, and he never gave it back. Like, what's up with people never giving books back? Like, it's not, I told you I would lend it to you, not give it to you. Like, it's weird, and I don't lend books anymore except to my mother, because she's the only one who returns them. I just don't understand how people can think that it's something not important. Oh my god. So I'm still thinking about that one. Which book has been with you most places? I've traveled quite a bit, so I haven't lugged around my books. I left them here when I went away. But there is one book that I kind of bought while traveling, and I traveled a lot with it, and it took me a while to read it, so by default it came with me to a few places. It's Lorna Doone by R.D. Blackmore. So I was reading this while traveling around Europe, so it's been to a few countries. So by default it's the one that had the most mileage. Any required reading that you hated in high school that wasn't so bad 2 years later? It's very specific. I haven't read books that I hated 2 years later. That's not the type of thing I usually do. Pick up a book I hate. But there is one I've changed my opinion on. It's The Crucible by Arthur Miller. I read that when I was in school, and I just did not like it. It's a play. And when you read a play, you need to be able to imagine the characters, and I just didn't care at that time. But then I saw the movie with Daniel Day-Lewis and Winona Ryder, and it changed my mind about the movie. It changed my mind about the book, and also like further getting older as well. You see things that happen in your life, and you're like, oh, okay, that's what it was about. I understand it now. Yeah, so I think it's very important play, so it does belong in school. I have not yet changed my mind on Death of a Salesman, so it was just depressing. I don't like it at all. Used or brand new? So I prefer brand new books personally. I don't necessarily like. If I buy a used book, it's gonna be something that's probably someone has never cracked open, so it looks new. I don't mind the yellowing pages, or I like a used book that looks like that. It's fine. But if it's gonna be like a normal paperback, or I prefer it to look new. And I don't necessarily take I take good care of my books, but if it becomes damaged, or if I turn the corner of the page, it's not that big a deal, unless it's like a special edition. But I prefer to do my own naming of the books. I don't like it to be but I will buy used books if it's something that's not necessarily a favorite author, or something that I know I won't find anywhere else. So then I'll buy used books, but I prefer new. Have you ever read a Dan Brown book? That's a strange question as well, but yeah, I sure have. Yes, it was very popular around 2004. I remember because I was traveling. He published a Da Vinci Code, and everyone and their mother was reading that. It was all over the place. I was going in airports, and it was everywhere. So I read it, and it was really good. I mean, for what it is, it's really good. I don't know why people bash him so much. I mean, I know he's not the best writer in the world, but it's very entertaining. And I have read most of his works, and at that year I read 4 of his books, like two standalones and 2 of his series with Robert something. So I have only 2 books left that I need to read by him to finish the series, and I probably will. Maybe I'll read one this year, or in 2025. Maybe. I usually use them as like palette cleansers when it's very easy to read and very entertaining. Have you ever seen a movie you liked more than the book? Yes, of course. The most glaring one, the one that's no competition whatsoever, is Last of the Mohicans. I saw the movie like years ago with Daniel Day-Lewis. I love him, and he was lovely, and I fell in love with him. And Madeleine Stowe was beautiful, and I don't know, the music was amazing in that movie. Amazing music, and the French people actually spoke French, so that was great. Usually they get the English people who sort of kind of speak French. They're like, no, not really. But yeah, it was such a good movie. And then I read the book, and I expected similar story. It was not. The character played by Daniel Day-Lewis, Long Carabine, he's not attractive in the book. He's just like a weirdo. He's not not the same. And then all the love stories were reversed, and the people who live or die were reversed. And it was so long and boring, and he was using the word multitude all the time, and usually that does not bother me. I don't really notice that kind of thing, but for some reason in that one I felt lost in the forest, like that's all I could see in his descriptions. So yeah, I did not enjoy the book at all, but I love the movie. And I also like the movie The Joy Luck Club better than the book, because it's so amazing. The book is good, but the movie is so good. It makes me cry every time I watch it. I recommend it. Then, have you ever read a book that made you hungry? Cookbook included. Well, I mean, cookbook would be easy, obviously. Yes, absolutely. The Hobbit. There's loads of nice descriptions of meals in there that always seem like so delicious. Like with the Beorn and his honey cakes. I mean, yes, I wanted those. And also, second would be Fried Green Tomatoes by Fanny Flagg. I've always wondered, we don't have those here, so I always wondered what they taste like. So I'm curious. Eventually, I probably will go to the south of the U.S. and have fried green tomatoes. And it's a really good book. So, who is the person whose book advice you'll always take? No one, because I'm very, very picky, and I kind of know what I want to read, and I know what I don't want to read. But if there is one close person, like most people in my life don't read, so the only person who does is my mom, and I trust her. She knows my taste, so yes, I would trust her judgment. However, there are books she reads that I don't like. We don't read exactly always the same things. Like, she doesn't like fantasy and sci-fi, and I love it, and she loves literary fiction, and I just, no. It's not for me. Is there a book outside of your comfort zone that you ended up loving? Yes, absolutely. On the Road by Jack Kerouac. It's set in the 50s, I think. Yes. And it's a bunch of guys backpacking around across the U.S. Route 66. I think they made that famous, and they're not. I mean, they're a bunch of young guys, so you know what they're doing. So they're taking drugs, they're sleeping around, and they're not washing. So I just don't understand why I love this so much. But it's very well, like it's so well written, so that's why. But it's definitely out of my comfort zone, too modern, like in the 50s. The 50s is too early, it's too late for me. I prefer pre-World War One, before modernity. So thank you, Mark, from Book Ramble for tagging me, and I'll be tagging two people. Matt at Random Reading Pathways, because I want to hear his answers. It usually does not do TBRs or plans ahead. He does a random generation for all his books he's gonna read. So I want to know about what he's read. And also I'm tagging Bookish Travels. She started kind of a club 500 for booktubers under 500 subscribers, so I'll link that below. So thank you very much for that, and you're tagged. Thank you, and see you next time.